What's the goal, though? So presumably you have it in a zoo so that people can observe the zebra, see what a zebra looks like or how it acts. Does are you trying to control for that?
Perhaps. How closely does the robot zebra have to mimic the real thing?
Right.
Is there a function in preserving the species of robot zebras? Or is there a function of preserving the zebra species at all, thus maybe we shouldn't use robot zebras?
Good question.
We asked about...
Go ahead.
I think it goes back to your question, what's the purpose of the zoo?
What's the purpose of the zoo? That's a great question, too. Go ahead, Josh.
Somebody had mentioned about how much should robotic zebras act like real ones? And that set me down thinking, what if the robot, instead of putting the robot zebra in the zoo, we tried to make robot zebras that could blend in with the zebra herd to influence zebra herd direction. Like maybe that could be used to, better keep them away from poachers or something. Like if they could start the stampede early, like they could have some sort of remote monitoring to know where there's a poacher sooner than the pack normally would.
That's interesting. As a monitoring agent, and what you just said, you set my mind down another trajectory too. Maybe we need, when we have a group of programmers on a project, maybe we need one AI for every 4 developers. Maybe there's a ratio there, developers and non-developers. We can do the same thing with zebras.
Okay, but isn't that what the Scrum Master is for, to keep development?
There you go. Go ahead.
So I'm wondering if you also need their natural predators, the robot hyena.
Yeah, you might.
I'm going to go off on a tangent here. So it's probably well known you don't see great white shark in an aquarium because they need a large area to swim. Not very many people have seen a great white shark. Would it be possible to make a robotic great white shark so that people could see it in an aquarium?
There you go.
Jaws.
So thank you for the people who just arrived. I'll tell you what's going on in case it makes no sense at all. We have a number of topics here, and we are talking about a topic for about 5 minutes. We have about a minute left on robot zebras. So if you have any thoughts on robot zebras over the next 60 seconds, this will be the time to get it out.
So in most discussions that I've heard about the ethics of keeping animals in zoos, I hear 2 major arguments. One being that they allow breeding programs to occur, and the other is to give people some sort of empathy for these animals that are in captivity. There are problems with both of those. One, for the latter, is that psychological studies have found that most people do not end up coming out of it with more concern for the animals. And the second, with regards to animals that are large and have complex behaviors, if they're being bred in captivity, it is almost impossible to reintroduce them to the wild because they have not learned those behaviors. So for large animals that aren't all based on instinct and they have to learn things, robots might be, more of a better choice, and then divert all of the funds to keep real animals to actual breeding programs in situ.
Time's up. So here's what we do. We spent 5 minutes on robot zebras. I'd like everyone in the room to give thumbs up if we want to keep talking about robot zebras. Thumbs down if we want to pick another great topic on here. We'll talk about any of these topics people chose except for NFTs. All right. Thumbs down on the robot zebra. Thank you for bringing robot zebra on here. It was a great conversation. Go back to the topics. We have directed acyclic graph. We have ethical considerations of the rise of AI. We have should TikTok or anybody else take all of our data and does it really matter? Will AI destroy our civilization? Network design for people who don't want to be network engineers. And AJ on NFT. AI on NFT, NFT on AI. Is that right? You want the NFT one? It's okay.
You read that correctly.
Okay. AI on NFT or NFT on AI. And we can discuss that. But any ideas there? I think rising to the top.
Intellectual privacy, the TikTok one?
digital privacy, this is a great one. And I think, for me, I go back and forth on this like every couple of years. Does it matter if Facebook has all my data? Does it not matter? Because who cares if Facebook knows I'm down at TELUS or talking to CPOSC or something else? Does that change the world? Does that put me at risk? Does it matter if I'm getting directed ads? I kind of like directed ads because they're meaningful to me. Although, after I buy something, I would love for this ads to stop. I'd love a button that says, I bought this. So let's hear about your opinion on the big tech companies owning all of our data. I'd love to hear it. Here we go. Let's hear it.
So I think that information is more important than you think, because that aggregated with other data from other sources becomes a really important indicator of everything you are. And I don't like all this posturing we're doing against TikTok right now, because at this point TikTok gets a lot of data, but if they were not allowed to operate in this country, they could just go to the big data brokers that already have all this information and just buy it on the open market. Well, my opinion, we don't need to ban TikTok from this country. What we need to do is have real substantive privacy laws so that none of these big companies can just collect up your data and sell it on the open market, because there is some degree of a danger. Think of the worst person you could think of getting into office and then saying, I don't like these kind of people. They can just go buy that data and have a pre-done list of any particular parameter they want to know on anybody. Do we want that information to be available on everybody? I think we should make efforts to limit that at the very least.
That's a great point. So there's always like, what's the worst thing that could happen with all these companies having the data, and thinking about it in those terms and preventing that future from coming true. So thank you. I appreciate it. Good.
Yeah, I think, yes, it's just like a tool where anything can be used terribly or be used well. Like there's an example where they found a murderer because Fitbit proved that they weren't in some location, so they were, and their heart rate went up, and so they killed somebody. So there's like, what is the method of figuring out, yes, this is okay to do and not okay to do in an objective way?
That's a great point. Yes.
So one of the hidden dangers of this is I was making soap bubbles for my kids, and I bought a sizable quantity of industrial grade water-based lubrication from Amazon, powder form. Apparently it's used in other industries, so my advertising became very strange and very disturbing. I feel like there's a level of concern there for people who just want to make
that button. This is not my category.
They don't have such a button on Amazon.
Yeah, you're right. They don't, and maybe that's where it needs to go. Yes, Jay.
Maybe the question isn't whether this data should be available. Maybe the question is who has title to the data and can grant usage of the data. So by implication, I use my Android phone and all of a sudden Google owns all my data. That's not part of what I want. What I want is to be able to say, Google, if you want my data, give me a free phone.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever.
What do you get in return? Yeah.
Or allow me to pay for my phone and you don't get all the data.
Right, yeah.
That would be the converse to that.
Right.
Yeah. What do you value more?
But having the title is the first part.
Yeah.
$5,000.
Yes.
Having the data isn't even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is certification too. Like you just said somebody, I mean, there's more details, but heart rate went up and they were in a location, they did the murder. But if I was in a location, I saw somebody be murdered, my heart rate sure would go up. So that's not like
Much better
how
than
people
when you start
interpret.
fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Like false positives that might come out of it because of the data that shows something true. Yeah.
And I was going to say, along that line, if we're going to allow the law enforcement agents to use all of our data, what makes that even more reliable than a polygraph that's not admissible in court?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just on the track of like buying a phone and not using the data, or vice versa, I think one of the big issues is a lot of things that we use, like YouTube, is paid for by the ads we consume, and therefore the data they have on us. Like that's the only way it could be profitable for them. Maybe not the only way, but I think like most people are not willing to pay for that sort of thing, and it's just okay that that's how it works. I think we in this room are a minority as far as this like data privacy concern and willingness to maybe pay extra for a phone in exchange for not using your data.
Great point.
Can I, just to counter that, there haven't been a lot of studies saying that this tracking based, I have no problem with watching an ad on a YouTube video. Does that ad need to run JavaScript that tracks me everywhere I go on the web in perpetuity? That doesn't provide them any more value. You know what I'm watching, you know what I'm interested in. Advertise to that. Don't track me everywhere I go. I don't mind the ads. I don't like the tracking and the personalizing it to me. You know what I'm watching, advertise to that. You've got information without personalizing it.
And say we're 5 minutes on this. Thumbs up if we want to dig a little bit more into the data. Thumbs down if we want to move on to a different topic. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. And I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Because I think there's 2 really good points here. You know, if you're not paying and you want the product, we've all heard that. And I don't like being tracked, I've heard that. But why?
Why? Like I say, you've got information. This topic interested me. You've got advertisers that want to advertise to people that are interested in that thing. Why do you need to track it to me personally in perpetuity? Again, when I move away from YouTube, you know all those tracking ads are still following you to the next site you go to. That's the part I have a problem with. I don't have a problem with you putting an ad in my face to pay for the video. I'm kind of okay with that. You know, I don't run heavy ad
One
blockers.
follow-up there.
Sure.
Why does it bother you to be tracked? That's what I was trying to get at.
Because do they need to know precisely who I am? What is their benefit in doing that at the expense of a bad actor now getting all of this extra information? Because those ads go automated to the highest bidder. Mm-hmm. So there's no vetting for, is this person malicious? Are they, going to take advantage of the people that are being tracked and not given and have not given consent? So show me the ads. Don't track me everywhere on the internet. That should still be able to pay for the 3-minute video that I'm watching.
Very good. Thank you so much. I saw a whole bunch of hands go up at once. Let's start back here.
It does seem that as far as wanting to be tracked or not, that would coincide with our at least in this country, our need for privacy. That we wouldn't want to be tracked for the same reasons we want to be private. And so that seems like a violation of that particular thing.
So a violation of the cultural norms that we value privacy. You think that might be at the core of this? Interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder if we value privacy because it's so innately tied to our giving.
Very, very well could be. Josh.
I've said if you're not paying, you're the product, not the customer, a lot of times. But increasingly that doesn't seem to be true. If I spend $1,300 on a phone, I'm still the product. If I go and buy a flagship TV, I'm still the product with no way out of all of the tracking. I have to take several steps back in quality and spend 10 times as much on a commercial display to get away from that sort of thing. And I pay $15 a month to YouTube, and I'm still YouTube's product.
Yeah, great point. Just because it doesn't have to be free anymore. Thank you. Jason.
So I just wanted to mention that in California recently passed a law, the CCPA, to protect consumers. You can get companies to stop tracking you if you're from California, presumably. But that law may eventually make its way to the rest of the country. Obviously, the EU has almost the same kind of law, I forget what it's called. GDPR. Thank you. That people can opt out of tracking. You can request your data from companies, and they're supposed to send you within, 90 days. I forget all of the data that they have on you. If you want that, they're supposed to opt you out if you want to opt out being tracked by them. So there is law that's starting to catch up to some of this desire for privacy.
I saw that there's a situation with Facebook where they have what they call shadow profiles, which meant if 5 of your friends have your name in their address book and they agree to give their address book to Facebook, you now have a Facebook profile that's not ready yet. As soon as you show up, they automatically start making connections. So is your privacy yours, or is it a product of your relationship so that people, do you own Josh's address book if he wants to keep you listed there? Does he own that connection to you?
Go ahead.
In reference, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Jason.
Jason Scott. In reference to what Jason was talking about, in Europe, they have an opt-in versus an opt-out like we have in the United States.
I think the opt-in is interesting, and so you put a big message up. Hey, if you want to watch this, you got to click here and then click here and your track. So I'm really curious. I wonder about that.
It's particularly useful in health data.
Okay.
I think one of the inherent issues with opt-in is we all see those like cookies pop-ups now, and you know, your instinct is to just be like, okay, accept all. Like, I just want to read this article or whatever. I feel like the same sort of thing would happen with this, you know, opt-in data sharing, where services are just going to push it on you until you just like, okay, fine.
Talking about the laws and like making progress there, I think another big issue we have is there's nothing really that forces that and make people comply with it. Like, I've done consulting for a couple of healthcare companies, and they're horrible at following HIPAA. They self-audit, they don't get any legal ramification, anything. I worked for one company that was a SaaS product. First day on the job, I found out all their health information just completely public on an AWS S3 bucket. No one cared, no instant. So like, the laws are great, but we also need a good way to enforce them for it to actually matter.
Great point. All right, and it's 5 minutes. This is a good topic. Thumbs up, keep going. Thumbs down if you want to hear about something else. This was a little bit more mixed, but I've seen more thumbs down. I think we're going to hear some more topics. Let's see what else we got. How much time do we have, Jason? What time is it?
It's 1:32.
What time is Mr.
I believe 1.
Directed acyclic graphs. Considerations.
210.
Considerations of ethical rise of AI, and there's another AI will destroy our civilization. And I was kind of curious about AI in music. Home network design and AI/NFTs. Yes.
I'm really curious about who asked about directed acyclic graphs, and I don't know that it needs to be a full 5 minutes, but if anyone else wanted to do that, you know, I think
Let's
I could
spend
one.
5 minutes on directed acyclic graphs. And let's start with a, thank you for putting this down. Can you teach us about this concept in like 30 seconds or a minute? And then we can have a discussion.
Sure. So like graph theory, you've got nodes, you've got edges. A directed acyclic graph is a certain kind of graph. So you've got a node that leads to another node, it can only travel in that direction. So that's the directed part. You can't go back. Acyclic means there's no cycles. You can never wind back in the same state that you were in. You always move forward. If time moves forward to the right, then you never move left. So you visit a new node. There's maybe several edges leading off that node. You know, you can have tree structures. You can have all kinds of complicated things. I think about this in terms of like if you're doing some kind of processing and you start, like the most basic thing would be some kind of shell script, you know, and you do things in serial. You do step A, step B, step C. You know, you just move down. What happens when step D breaks and you need to rerun that step? Well, if you've got a shell script, you either have to comment everything out and run just that one piece, or you run the entire thing and, you know, everything that took, who knows, hours, you have to run that all again. So you either have to know a whole lot about the process, or you lose a whole bunch of time. So a directed acyclic graph, if each step is something that you know whether it's been done or not, and you can only go forward, if something breaks, you can pick up where you left off. And you never have to rerun steps A through B, A through C, in order to do those other things. So there's various software in like data processing
worlds. Airflow is a big one. There's one called Prefect that use DAGs, directed acyclic graph, as a sort of basic processing concept so that you can eliminate waste, essentially.
So two questions. First of all, you look at like neural nets. Is there a similarity between the directed acyclic graph and like the machine learning nodes, or is that not really the same because of the feedback loops and all of those other pieces?
It seems sort of similar in concept. I couldn't really speak to it.
And then the idea is that we have a complex set of things that need to be done. We're kind of moving down them in parallel, and if a node falls off, we can take a different path to get that same result.
Potentially, you can build that into it. But the idea is that your process is very well mapped out. What are the predecessors of what are the steps to do a thing, to produce a product, and then anytime something goes out of date, anytime something breaks, you can pick up exactly and only do the work that needs to be done.
Interesting.
Question on the nature of this, what is it called? Asynchronous?
Directed acyclic.
Directed
acyclic.
Acyclic. Directed acyclic. So does that mean if I had a complicated, like we mentioned, neural nets, where we have a feed forward iteration and then a feedback iteration, can I do that? Is it two separate directed acyclic?
You could probably arrange it that way. It's just, I don't know that it wouldn't necessarily be able to treat the nodes that you've already visited as the same node that you're feeding back to.
Right, and that would actually defeat the purpose of doing that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, if I understand this correctly, maybe an analogy would be good to help my understanding. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with Ansible, way of automating, doing actions on systems. So, it sounds like this may be sort of like an Ansible playbook where it kind of does step A, B, C, and then if something fails, there are other steps that are taken, but there's always other steps and actions moving forward. Is that comparable here?
It sounds comparable, yeah. I mean, another tool we use the concept is make.
Okay.
So make files. They have targets, they have predecessors, and they have a recipe. This is like build this thing. So you don't tell it I'm going to run step 1, step 2, step 3. You say these are all the rules to make these things. You do it, and then you can tell it run 5 things at once or do it one at a time.
All right, very good. So that's 5 minutes. If we want to keep going, we can ask for maybe some more concrete examples of workloads that we're running through this. I think that might be interesting here. Or we can move on. We have some other topics that we can discuss. So quick thumbs up, thumbs down. A little mixed, but I think there's more thumbs down, including from the author. That's always a tip when the author gives the thumbs down. He says, I love this. All right. So we got a couple AI questions. And network design. And if anybody else has another topic now that they've kind of seen how it works, I'm open to new topics.
Can we do the AI, how AI will destroy the civilization, our civilization?
I would love to do how AI will destroy our civilization. And the robot zebra gets me thinking, because if I think about robot zebra, I'm not thinking of animatronics at Disney. I'm thinking about looks like a zebra, it's got AI, it acts like a zebra, it's like high fidelity robot. And we're starting to get to the point where these AI tools that can actually make these things happen. And if we extend that, there's been such rapid growth over the last, seems like a couple of days on AI. It seems like it's come from nowhere. All of a sudden, we have these amazing tools that can do these amazing things. Where's that headed? What's the purpose of humans? Do we need 3 programmers in the AI to form a team? Or is it just the AIs with no humans? Is this going to destroy human civilization and lead to the rise of the robots? Or is this tool that we can contain and use to better society. So I think these are some great questions. Josh.
So OpenAI uses a term from time to time, AGI, for artificial generalized intelligence. That's their end goal, they say. So I think that until things get there, if they can get there, and ever will get there, then there's no question that there's still need for humans, because the AIs, can't update themselves so far. They can't. There's a lot they can't do, and they can't actually learn on their own. Somebody has to go back and put them through retraining steps and determine was this a success or not.
Maybe you guys can help me out. Here's my mental model of the current state of the AIs and chatbots and all that. So they start with random static, which is called static, like noise. And you give it a prompt, and it keeps manipulating that static until it starts to take shape, take more shape, and more, take more shape, and then becomes something that's recognizable that matches the pattern of the input. Is that generally right? I know you've dug into this a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
I think in the older days it would be you start with an input and a desired output, and then you have the static in the middle, and you keep training until the desired inputs give the desired outputs. I'm not sure how much that's still true on more modern systems. I haven't really managed to keep up with it.
Because I mean, it's just machine learning in reverse, because it's running, like machine learning detects patterns, and this is like, does this random pattern closer or further away from the goal? I don't know how accurate that is, or if I have the wrong mental model.
I think it is a mental model that is definitely valid, but maybe not in every circumstance. A mental model I like for a lot of the current large language model ones is autocomplete on steroids.
Spicy autocomplete. Tom.
In terms of kind of where we stay currently with AI, I've been playing around with ChatGPT quite a bit. This might be perhaps too unfair of a generalization, but I like to compare it to like an intern. Hey, can you do this for me? Let me double check your output. Let me double check and make sure that what you're doing is on track and correct. So it seems like it's kind of getting close to what your suggestions or what your requests are, but there's a lot of work to be done in terms of accuracy and timeliness, I think. And I don't know where kind of the future holds for that, but it certainly sounds like that's where we're moving.
I'm more afraid that a lot of managers who are happy with substandard stuff that they see are just going to say this is cheaper than a person and it's good enough. Look at the instructions you get with your anything you buy. That's good enough.
Yep.
Very possible.
But you would hope, both with your intern example and your example, you would hope that intern at some point, if they were totally confused and had no idea what to do next, would come to you and say, hey, I need some help, where the AI will just make up complete bullshit and give it to you with the utmost of confidence.
Because all it's trying to do is get that static closer to something that looks like the right pattern.
Yeah.
I think that's all it does today.
That's exactly, well, that's from what I understand, that's exactly what it does. What's the most likely word that's going to come up? Oh, there you have it.
Where are we at?
For a while.
Yeah, so I was going to touch on the same note, so that it's definitely like, the subreddit, Confidently Incorrect, AI definitely fits into that. And I see a lot of people who are using it, that's their only source. They don't double check it, they don't go back and use it. And we talk about destroying civilization. I can see our civilization going downhill just from us getting dumber, from people relying on AI and never checking, hey, was that actually right? Did it do the right thing?
Yeah, if we get destroyed, it's because of us, not because of me. I like that.
I mean, that.
5 minutes? Thumbs up, thumbs down? All right, let's keep going.
I think, I don't know if you've seen Dopesick, but like even, we already do these things where we don't have a way to trust like Purdue Pharma, because like their whole thing was the FDA approval, and they referenced some doctor that said that OxyContin was not addictive. So I don't see how letting an AI just present some information is different than anybody else. Like there's always going to be, like, how do you trust it? You have to know a lot in order to trust it. You have to be an expert.
That's great, great thought.
Yeah. So, yeah, I never bought into like the AI is just going to be so smart that it'll just destroy it. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. There has to be, it is killing 10 people now. It's going to kill 20 people tomorrow. And I've never seen or understood that.
I think like the biggest risk is that everybody in this room, I think, has a foundation understanding what the AI is and how you can trust it. Most people don't. Like most people think of Skynet or like they got a sci-fi understanding of it, and it's not. It looks right, but it's completely the wrong basis, so they don't know how to apply it.
Good.
I think there are also big risks of using AI, especially in making certain decisions, because we've seen multiple times so far that the AI is subject to biases that are existing with the humans that created it. So I could see many, many potential futures where maybe AI doesn't destroy all of us, but it destroys some of us.
Great point.
In reference to your model that you just diagrammed towards this move forward model, it does seem that whether the answer comes up as right or wrong, it doesn't understand why. And humans kind of, at least intuitively, understand that it doesn't make sense.
And to be fair, I may have an incomplete understanding of this. I have not studied it, I'm not, I guess I call myself a computer scientist, not really, or a developer. So I would challenge you all to go learn a little bit more about how that works and if that model is true or if it's not true. And then come back next year and we can talk about it.
Yeah, I think one of the most imminent threats, sort of with what you're talking about with bias, is it sort of aggregates information, right? So there's sort of one point where something can be incorrect and the person receiving that information might not know that it's incorrect, might not see anything wrong with it. But then also the other side is, already people are using it to generate like articles and stuff. So it's sort of this self-feedback loop where, who knows, there's just going to be a plethora of information out there that, will both be generated and interpreted by these large language models. And I think in that sense we are, they'll be sort of the only thing a lot of people will use, and it's sort of, we'll all be subject to those biases and stuff.
Yeah. Good.
So I'm learning to program right now, and something I've heard fellow students ask about is asking ChatGPT a coding question, like, hey, can you help me fix this bug, versus asking like a senior dev. And ChatGPT doesn't have a motivation to help you work through the problem. They might spit out an answer that may or may not be correct. And if you're just learning, then that's really hard to interpret that is actually correct, potentially. Versus like, if you're working with a senior dev, then they might not just give you the answer, they'll help you learn and kind of follow that track. So it's like, what are the education patterns then for people who are just learning programming and who could potentially use it as a crutch?
Great point. I wonder if that can also shift as they become more and more sophisticated. Yes?
So with AI art, there's like starting, it's already, you can see like a style, like it's AI style. If you look at it, even if it's got 5 fingers in the hand, you can tell it's going to get boring real fast. It might not destroy the world, but if that, like, if we use it a lot, we're just going to have a lot of boring art, which maybe not the biggest problem, but it's still.
Yeah, that goes back to my pop music question. I mean, if so many of the pop songs are formulaic, they all sound the same. There's certain patterns in them. Maybe they're all going to be AI. Good.
Kind of on that note, it's also kind of making things that already happened just different than what they were. So it's almost like taking culture that already is and just extending it into the future. And it's not necessarily generating new, it's just generating new combinations of what already is.
A friend of mine at work, we'll go to the next name and go with him, but he's an artist. So first of all, you got to understand artists and how they talk. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, AI cannot create my art because it hasn't felt the same pain that I've felt. And an artist is bringing all of their experience and their life into that piece, and that's something the AI will never be able to do, and that's why it becomes urgent, right?
Yeah, but also the viewer piece brings all that too, so.
There's that. All right, keep going, move on. A little more mixed this time, let's see. Is there another topic?
I think it would be cool to make sure that the home network one gets
Home networks.
somewhere.
Who asked for home networks? Awesome. I hate networking almost as much as I hate my printer. Not quite as bad, it's very close. Talk to us about home network for
So I've been a dev and I like to tinker with things, but some things that just need to just work, right? Every time I ask for advice on home networking, I say I have 3 things that are probably bad to have on my network, like the Roku and all the little device things, and I have all these computers. What's an easy, relatively easy way that I can make sure that I keep this stuff separate without having to be a network engineer? Then Josh will tell me, just get a Dell from eBay and install pfSense, OpenSense, and do this stuff. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, that's a lot of words. And maybe it's not that simple. I don't know if it is or not, or it can be, but I'm trying to find that balance.
Well, I think one option that a lot of people would probably gasp in horror at is buy multiple home routers and just stack them. You know, so like everything you care about is behind one router. Everything you don't care about is hooked up to the other router. Both of them are hooked up into your ISP supplied router if you keep that. And at this point, anything that's like, and by default, things that are behind one router aren't going to be able to talk. They can talk like upstream, but not sideways.
Where was this Josh in here?
So,
I was perhaps trying not to give an answer that would cause everyone to gasp in horror.
So say your name is Ken and you're still trying to like, wait, router does this and switch does that, and don't they do the same thing with them? Are they still different? Routers and switches? And you really just don't understand. And then,
blend those.
how do you get started in this? How do you like go from, I think I have a TCP address, but I'm not sure, to understanding how to set some of these things up?
So I feel like there's different tiers, and I don't want to be a shill, but personally I'm a big fan of Unify here because they make it very easy. There's like the beginner stuff, you can get like Netgear things or Linksys routers, and they all just kind of work. Take them out of the box, plug them in, they go. Then you have like prosumer, slightly better, and that's kind of where Unify falls in. We're a little bit familiar with some of the terms. If you click around on the website, you can actually figure out how to get the devices you want and make your network. They actually have like some guides on how to do that. Or if you're really nerdy, you can go to like something like Meraki or Cisco or some like big name thing where you got to pay a lot of money for licenses and stuff. But there's some products out there that kind of hit that sweet spot in the middle. I think Unify is one of them. Microtech is another one that if you're familiar enough with it, you can kind of do it and you have a very nice interface with the point, click and away you go. But definitely interesting.
Go ahead, Josh.
I'm curious where in your hierarchy something like DIY from LFS would fit.
Oh man, that would probably be like a side branch for hyper nerd.
I use the Google Wi-Fi, so Google has all my data. Here's it.
I like the way you started out, you said there are tiers, and I was thinking, yes, there are definitely
salty tears.
I think as a technologist, one of the things we can't be afraid of is getting a router and hooking some things up and seeing what happens and breaking it 3 times and learning from it. And I'm sure Josh and Tom, who are like really knowledgeable about these things, have broken networks more times than we've tried to put them together. So for me, learning anything is, I'm going to buy some of the cheap stuff and we hook it up and it didn't work. hey Josh, and you learn them. So I think that falls into anything else. First, you need to be like, hey, I want to build this thing, and then just hack at it.
So what you're all saying, the first step is to have a friend who's networking.
Absolutely. Or join our tech Slack, because there's many knowledgeable people.
And the second thing is, don't have a husband who's a security professional, because you can't have any of the Google Home stuff or Amazon Alexa.
Yes.
You have to say if Louis doesn't work in my house, no matter how good of an engineer I am, I'm in trouble. So I have that first constraint is I can't take off the important people in the house.
Yeah.
No matter how security conscious I am. If that TV doesn't go on and that show doesn't go on, I might as well not even show up.
Yeah,
There's real constraints, right?
Step one is network partition. I think networking is a great topic, and engineers should know a little bit about it, how it works, how the packets flow, what the security is. I joke a little bit, but I got to set up my AWS, and I got to know what my masks are and what my network gateway is and all these things. And it all matters if you really want to understand the entire system of what you're building. And it's easy to write code for over here, but a lot of the times as we go through our careers, we have to think a little bigger and a little broader. And networking definitely comes in there. So any time spent learning some of those basics is very worthwhile. Any more on networking? How much time we got left?
Let's see.
10 more
We,
minutes.
yeah.
10 more minutes, yes.
I've got an idea for a topic.
Let's hear it.
I'd love to talk about right to repair and like the increasing complexity of devices and really everything we use.
This is an awesome topic. Let's do it. If I had a little screwdriver, I probably couldn't fix this anyway because of the complexity and the density and specialization of all the materials. And on the other hand, it should not be a black box that's all closed up and locked up. And we should be able to theoretically make some of these changes. So let's go ahead.
Yes, the phone is a great example, and I think that's the most common one. But something I've been thinking about a lot lately is like the cars we drive. Like, I drive a car from the 80s, so when something goes wrong, I can just like go in with a hammer and fix it right. But my parents, they have a Volt, and it's great. It's a wonderful car to drive, but it's all computers, like it's all electric, and it's a great car. But I would not want to get in there to try to fix anything, which means you have to go to the dealership to get anything repaired. That's more expensive. So yeah.
All right. Bunch of hands going up here. Let's go right to left. Go ahead.
I have less of a problem with the complexity itself, but more of a problem with companies intentionally locking people out of them. If you increase the complexity, you should release, at the very least, specs and instructions so that these things can be repaired and ideally reprogrammed if they need to be. You have a phone, yeah, you can't make a phone like this without a great deal of complexity. It's going to be hard to repair, but it should be attainable once the public gets more knowledge. I don't want the knowledge locked up. I mean, if you make a small complex thing, okay, that's what it is, it's very convenient, but you should be able to unlock it and do the things you need to do with it.
Our generation has seen the older people, they've soldered their own computers, and we've built computers, and we've installed this and installed that, and now, you lose that experience of how things work, and you're just using it as a thing instead of like being a technologist. Go ahead, Josh.
I think, kind of jumping off what you said, that I'm more concerned about, like, the fact that your phone's glued together and you can't open it with a screwdriver doesn't concern me. Like, people can and have really done a good job of figuring out how to get around through that. What concerns me is, for instance, saying real Apple parts that have been taken out of scrap phones that are being sent back to the US, getting them blocked as counterfeit when they're the real thing. Cryptographically signing the parts so that you can't put a screen from one iPhone into another one. And then also, increasingly commonly, is cryptographically signing all the parts of a car to each other, so that when say a body control module goes bad in a Volt, you can't go get the exact same one from another Volt and put it in because it's cryptographically locked out of the system.
When there's
which
no
is
express
what-
benefit of doing so other than locking you out.
And when people complain about right to repair of tractors, that is especially when the words John Deere are involved, that's especially what they're talking about, is because John Deere loves to layer that on top of open standards. So like there's this ISO standard for how tractor implements are supposed to talk to tractors, and then John Deere kind of cripples that with their own crypto signing stuff layered on top of it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But also, it's kind of concerning when you see like there's less and less opportunities to get your hands and stuff, and also more and more like jobs say 5 to 10 years of experience required. It's
Not allowed to do
it's harder
anything.
to jump over that gap.
Great point. I mean, we used to hack everything.
Yeah, the amount of waste that generates as well, you know, if you can't repair your device, it goes into a landfill, you know, ends up somewhere in a burning pile of rubble, releasing its toxins right into the environment, like.
That's a great point.
you
Maybe
know,
my
it's
phone
insane.
was twice as thick and it was more environmentally ideal.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, does anyone know, are there any leaders in like the cell phone industry that have cell phones that you're allowed to repair? I feel like this is a market opportunity. Yeah.
Great question.
There's the tourism phones, but they are neither cheap nor particularly cutting edge, but they are holding to all of the parts are repairable, all of the firmware is reflashable, but there are trade-offs for that.
Jane, your answer.
What's that?
You can get a right to repair kit from Apple, but it's multiple hundreds of dollars and it's a big suitcase that weighs 50 pounds.
Yes.
So one of the insidious things about the John Deere that I've heard is that you have to subscribe to the firmware, so farmers they can't afford it, are just buying overseas Russian firmware that could be doing anything to control their tractors. So a literal bot army of real tractors out there.
And I think we only have a couple minutes left, so let's just keep rolling with this one. I think this is a good time. Good, Josh.
Going back up to John Deere and tying to a previous one, you go and you buy a $750,000 implement from John Deere, you're still not the customer, you're still the product, because that implement generates a tremendous amount of data that all gets sent back continuously to John Deere to feed their other products that they will then try to sell you and your competitors and your upstream and your, you know, who you're selling your stuff to and who you're buying your stuff from. I mean, like basically, you give them $750,000 and they're extracting all the data they can from you and are using that for everyone around you to make life better for them instead of you. And maybe also for you a little bit better too, right?
Including selling it to your competitors if
Right.
that's
Like-
a better dollar.
Right, like selling information to your neighbors who are often your competitors.
Yep.
Good.
I grew up in a farm country, everyone had John Deere's, and there really weren't that many people, like licensed John Deere repair around, so it got bad one year around harvest time. But people still went back to John Deere's, so it's not like their whole right to repair thing was actually like stopping all my neighbors from buying their stuff, so.
Yeah.
I mean, how much real competition is there though?
Yeah, that's it.
Good.
This is kind of related, but I've had like this interest in, like we have advanced technology for like cars, and pretty much you can't get a car without having a computer in it nowadays. But there was a time when there was no computer in a car. How can we create like a low-tech, high-tech version of a car that like can like kind of go back in time, but also keep the advances of specific aspects of the car that may make it maybe more accessible from a mechanical manipulation kind of perspective? Like it's kind of like the phone thing. Like, can you actually modify it? It seems like there's something there, but it's not necessarily conducive to like the consumer product kind of thing.
Good, man.
Yeah, I think there we
Thank
sort
you
of
for coming out.
go back to what we were talking about with tracking data. I think we're in the minority about like caring about these sorts of things. So the average end user would be like, oh, when I crack my screen, guess it's time for a new phone, right? That's just sort of the mentality.
I think that also would be very hard, like one thing that keeps a company from trying to go back, unless they're selling, you know, kit cars or something like that, is you just can't, or at least nobody knows how to hit today's emissions targets and today's safety features, that are increasingly being required, such as lane assistance stuff. I believe is mandatory next year, maybe, or I don't remember exactly. So there's a lot of computer-based features that are becoming mandatory, and so unless your company can somehow get around that, say by only selling as a kit, you know, there is no going back.
Here's another wonky thing. Chariot buggies, like hypertech, like buggy chariots. Just like think about the zebra robot, you know, combine those two things, you got it.
Combine that with the e-book crowd somehow, like turn the bike into a chariot, into the horse maybe, or, I mean, there are definitely some possibilities that can be explored fairly realistically.
But then you gotta have right to repair for your robot zebras. We're back to the beginning.
I think we are out of time, but thank you everybody for coming out and chatting and everything.